The first time my sister accused me of hurting her just by speaking, I laughed. I didn't know that 10 years later, her rules would almost kill us all. My sister's name is Lily, and if you asked anyone in our hometown of Maplewood, Ohio, they'd say she was always the sensitive one. Sensitive to thunderstorms, terrified of fireworks, covering her ears at birthday parties when kids sang too loudly. At first, it was just Lily being Lily. But when she turned 16, everything changed. She found some article online about auditory processing sensitivity and decided she had the worst case anyone had ever seen. Doctors ran tests, perfect hearing, no medical issues. But Lily swore they just didn't understand her rare condition. And once she made her mind up, there was no arguing. That's when the whispering began. At first, she asked us to lower our voices. Then she started snapping at us for yelling when we were just talking normally. Soon came rules. Laminated posters taped on every wall of our house. Whisper zone, normal voices equals violence. She carried a decibel meter like a cop. If anyone spoke above a whisper, she'd collapse dramatically, shrieking that we were torturing her. "You're killing me," she'd scream, even if you were just asking her to pass the milk. And my parents, instead of standing up to her, gave in. They signed contracts Lily made us write, promising to whisper around her. They hired an online therapist she'd found, who taught us about something called vocal violence. We spent hours in family voice therapies practicing whispering. Imagine whispering happy birthday around a cake, while your sister holds a meter to your mouth. That was my life. It poisoned everything. My dad whispered at the TV during Browns games. My mom whispered, "We won," after hitting a $2,000 scratch-off ticket, like she was delivering bad news. Even my boyfriend dumped me because he said visiting my house felt like a funeral. Every time I begged my parents to fight back, they'd say, "Keeping peace is what matters. You'll get used to it." But I never did. And Lily didn't stop at home. She forced the school to create quiet zones around her. Students had to whisper in the hall when she walked by. Teachers rewrote lesson plans so they could be done silently. She even made people sign liability waivers before talking to her. It was insane. But it wasn't deadly. Not yet. Until the night I woke up to the smell of smoke. It was 1:40 a.m. in the middle of January. The living room curtains were burning. Lily had left one of her so-called healing candles going, and now flames were climbing the walls. I sprinted to wake my parents, but after years of conditioning, I whispered, "Fire! There's a fire!" They didn't wake up. Smoke thickened, my throat raw, but I kept whispering. Whispering at their door. Whispering right in my mom's ear. Nothing. Dad couldn't hear me over the white noise machine Lily demanded in every bedroom. Finally, I ran to Lily's room. Heart pounding, torn between two choices, whisper and let everyone die, or scream and face her wrath. I screamed. For the first time in years, I screamed. "Fire!" And Lily didn't run. She lunged at me. She clawed my arm, shrieking that I'd assaulted her with noise as the hallway filled with smoke. I shoved her away and screamed again until my parents finally woke up. By the time firefighters dragged us outside, half the house was gone. They told us if we'd stayed 2 more minutes, none of us would have survived. But instead of gratitude, Lily called the cops. She told the fire marshal I'd started the fire myself, just to have an excuse to scream at her. She produced years of evidence she'd kept, recordings of every time I'd spoken too loudly, photos of my angry face, notebooks of violations. And when the marshal asked my parents, they sat silent. My mom even whispered, almost to herself. She always hated the whispering. Maybe this was her way out. I just stared at her. Smoke still burning my lungs, wrists red from the handcuffs, as police arrested me for arson. That was 7 weeks ago. And this morning, my mom showed up outside my apartment. She was clutching Lily's medical records. Crying. But that wasn't the worst of it, not even close. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. My throat still burned from smoke, and when I tried to speak, nothing came out. My voice was gone. Across the metal table, a detective tapped his pen, waiting. When I couldn't answer, he slid a notepad toward me. My hand shook as I scribbled everything: the whisper rules, the disabled smoke alarms, Lily's obsession with noise violence. He read it with raised eyebrows, glancing at me like I was crazy. "So, your sister made you whisper, and that's why you couldn't wake your parents," he said flatly. I nodded, writing frantically that the fire started from Lily's candle, that she forced us to disable every alarm. He didn't look convinced. After 3 hours of written interrogation, they released me. The charges weren't dropped, just pending investigation. My parents were waiting in the lobby. My mom clutched Dad's arm so tight it looked like she was hanging on for balance. Neither of them looked at me. The drive back to our half-burned house was silent, not the whisper silence I'd grown used to, but the kind that makes you feel already guilty. Yellow caution tape stretched across the charred section. Lily's car was in the driveway. Inside, she'd already rearranged the living room. Fresh Whisper Zone posters covered every wall, bigger than before. She walked out of the kitchen wearing her headphones, holding her decibel meter like a weapon. She pointed it at me, then at our parents, watching even how we breathed. Mom's voice immediately dropped to a whisper. Dad cleared his throat softly, carefully. "And me?" I grabbed a notepad from the counter and wrote. She left the candle burning. She turned off the alarms. She's lying. Lily read over my shoulder and laughed, an actual laugh, harsh and loud, like she'd forgotten to be sensitive. Then she leaned toward my parents and whispered about trauma responses, how criminals project their crimes onto victims. That night, I lay in my smoke-damaged room, trying to force sound out of my throat. Nothing. Not even a whisper. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lily had wanted us silent, and now I really was. Through the thin walls, I heard her on the phone. Her voice wasn't a whisper anymore. It was normal. Smooth. Almost cheerful. She was talking to someone about documenting everything, building an airtight case. The next morning, I woke to find my phone and laptop gone. Lily stood in my doorway with Mom, whispering about how the fire marshal needed to examine them for evidence. Mom nodded like Lily was some kind of authority. That day, I went to the library. Their computers became my only lifeline. I dug into Lily's online activity, and what I found made my stomach drop. She'd been posting for months on forums about her abusive sister who refused to respect her medical needs. The posts always lined up with the times I'd argued against the whisper rules. And then I found one from just 3 weeks before the fire. Sometimes I think something dramatic has to happen for people to take acoustic violence seriously. Maybe if there were real consequences. My hands shook as I printed it out. Back home, Lily had already installed new locks on her door and my parents' door. For safety, she explained. Only they had keys. I was effectively locked out of most of the house. That evening, Mrs. Quinn, our neighbor, brought over a casserole like she always did after storms. Lily intercepted her at the door, whispering about how I'd snapped under the pressure of her condition. I saw Mrs. Quinn's eyes flick toward me, standing down the hallway. She looked uncertain. Almost suspicious. But Lily gently shut the door before I could write a single word. When I went back to my room, more of my things were missing: my journal, old photographs, even my high school yearbook. On my pillow was a new document, a family safety contract requiring me to stay 10 feet away from everyone at all times. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a prison. I couldn't speak. Couldn't prove myself. Couldn't even get to my parents without Lily filtering everything I said. And then, on the third day, I discovered her ultimate plan. While she was in the shower, I slipped into the kitchen and found her day planner. Scribbled in the margins were notes about 3 different lawyers. She was preparing criminal charges for the fire, a civil lawsuit for years of acoustic assault, and a restraining order to remove me from the house permanently. She wasn't just silencing me. She was erasing me. That was the night I decided I had only one option left. If I couldn't speak the truth, I'd have to prove it another way. But that decision would put me directly in Lily's crosshairs. And she was ready for me. The first memory that hit me wasn't from the fire. It was from when I was 9 years old, long before the whisper rules. I was sitting in the backyard with a bowl of ice cream when Lily came storming out of the house. She was 14, furious that Dad had turned the radio up while grilling. She yanked the plug straight out of the socket and screamed at him that he was trying to kill her with sound. Dad laughed it off then, even teased her. But what I remember most was the way Mom's face changed. Not amused. Not worried. Just guilty, like she already knew she'd give in. That look was the same one she gave me now whenever Lily accused me of noise violence. It wasn't belief. It was surrender. I thought about that a lot the night I made my first move. Lily was in her room with the door locked. I slipped out, walked the 3 blocks to the fire station, and wrote a note for the night dispatcher, "Please, let me speak with the fire marshal. Urgent." To my surprise, he agreed. Marshal Davis, a tall man with a graying mustache, met me in his office the next morning. My voice was still gone, so I wrote my questions on a yellow legal pad. He pulled up the preliminary report on his computer and showed me. The fire had started in the living room. Candle wax residue confirmed it. The smoke detectors had been disabled manually. He hesitated, then admitted, "It doesn't look like arson. But it also doesn't prove who left that candle burning." I slid across the forum posts I'd printed at the library, the ones where Lily fantasized about real consequences. His frown deepened as he read, but he shook his head. "This is concerning. But it's not evidence." I left his office feeling both lighter and heavier. Lighter because someone finally listened. He didn't laugh at me. He didn't call me crazy. But heavier because listening wasn't enough. Lily had spent years building her victim narrative, and I had nothing but scraps to fight back. When I got home, Lily was waiting. She stood on the porch with her decibel meter pointed at my footsteps. She'd installed new motion sensors and lights while I was gone. As I walked closer, she whispered into her phone, "She's threatening me. She's escalating." The lights flickered on, throwing her shadow across the driveway like some kind of stage play. I froze. She clutched her chest, stumbling backward in fake panic, her whispered narration growing more dramatic by the second. Mom appeared at the door in her robe, eyes darting between Lily's cowering act and me standing still 20 feet away. I pointed at my throat, then mind writing. Mom's face hardened. She pulled Lily inside and shut the door. When I tried to go in minutes later, my key didn't work. They'd changed the locks. So I slept in my car that night, wrapped in an old gym towel. Smoke still clung to my clothes, the seats digging into my back. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flames climbing those curtains again. The next morning, Dad left for work without even glancing at me parked at the curb. Mom left an hour later. Lily stayed behind, probably documenting my presence as stalking. I drove back to the fire station, running on fumes and adrenaline. This time, Marshal Davis seemed more curious than cautious. He showed me security footage from the store where Lily bought her meditation candles. She'd purchased dozens of them over the past few months. Always in cash. Always the same brand. Why would someone who claimed to be terrified of noise willingly shop in a crowded store every week? And why only cash when she normally used cards? The pattern looked less like healing rituals and more like planning. But suspicion wasn't proof. That's when I remembered Dr. Elaine Porter, the first specialist Lily ever saw when she claimed to have auditory sensitivity. She'd tested Lily's hearing and told my parents it was perfectly normal. Lily had dismissed her as ignorant. I took 3 buses across town to find her. By then, my savings were almost gone. But when I wrote out everything on a notepad and showed her the forum posts, her expression hardened. She remembered Lily instantly. She didn't have hearing problems, Dr. Porter said, pulling out Lily's old file. She had behavioral issues. She reacted when people watched. That's not sensitivity, that's performance. She couldn't diagnose Lily now, but she agreed to write a statement about her original findings. She also gave me the name of a colleague, a trauma specialist who could evaluate me. She said losing my voice sounded like psychological aphonia, trauma-induced muteness. It was the first time anyone had given my silence a name. Leaving her office, I felt a flicker of hope. But when I reached the parking lot, I froze. My car windows were smashed in. Glass glittered across the seats. Nothing was stolen. It was a message. I stood there shaking with fury, sweeping shards with my bare hands until my fingers bled. Lily wasn't just trying to silence me. She was trying to erase me. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something rise up in my chest. Not fear. Not guilt. Anger. A spark of sound escaped my throat. Hoarse. Broken. But real. No, I croaked to the empty air. And in that moment, I knew Lily hadn't destroyed me. She'd just given me something to fight for. But I had no idea how dangerous her next move would be. The day I finally made sound again, Lily almost had me arrested a second time. It was barely more than a rasp, just one word, no, but to me it felt like an earthquake. My voice wasn't dead. It was wounded, clawing its way back through smoke and silence. I clung to that fragile hope as I drove to see Dr. Marcus Webb, the trauma specialist Dr. Porter had recommended. He ran tests on my throat, looked at me with kind eyes, and said something that made me cry without sound: "Your vocal cords are fine. It's your body's way of protecting you." Years of forced whispering, years of suppression, and then the fire. It broke the last thread. You didn't lose your voice. You shut it away. He started me on humming exercises. Simple, low vibrations. My chest ached with every try, but slowly, a faint hum buzzed in the air. He wrote me a medical note confirming trauma-induced voice loss. Evidence. When I stepped back into the parking lot, still humming under my breath, 2 police officers stood by my car. My stomach dropped. Lily had reported it as abandoned and connected to criminal activity. I showed my license, registration, everything. One officer seemed sympathetic. The other eyed me like I was dangerous. And across the street, I spotted her, Lily in her car, phone raised, recording the entire thing. She wanted this. Every police encounter, every note of suspicion became another brick in her story, her unstable sister, spiraling out of control. The officers finally let me go, warning me to get my smashed windows repaired immediately. As I drove off, Lily followed me in her rearview lens, probably narrating her next performance. That night, I parked behind an abandoned factory on the edge of Maplewood. The place smelled of rust and weeds, but no one bothered me there. It became my headquarters. My safe ground. I spread out everything I'd gathered: the fire marshal's report, Dr. Porter's statement, forum posts, Lily's old medical records I'd printed from the library. Piece by piece, her empire of lies was cracking. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed someone who could speak for me in court. That's when Dr. Porter connected me to an attorney named Daniel Blackwell, a lawyer who specialized in false accusation cases. I drove 3 towns over to meet him, clutching my folder like it was a life raft. Daniel listened carefully as I rasped through parts of my story, then slid him the written evidence when my voice broke down. He didn't flinch. He'd seen similar cases: manipulative family members weaponizing systems designed to protect victims. He agreed to take my case. On contingency. Free unless we won. "Emma," he said, leaning forward, "you're in more danger now than ever. People like your sister, when they lose control, they get reckless. She's going to push harder." He was right. Because the very next day, Lily staged a breakdown at the Maplewood Library. She collapsed in the lobby, convulsing, whispering that she'd seen me stalking her through the window. The staff panicked, called 911, and paramedics rushed her out, sirens silenced at her demand. Only problem? I was in Daniel's office the whole time. The building had cameras. I had an airtight alibi. For once, her performance didn't land. Not with the people who mattered. But that didn't stop the town. Flyers appeared on telephone poles that night, my face, labeled dangerous, do not approach. Underneath was Lily's contact info. Everywhere I went, people stared. The grocery store refused to serve me. Drivers honked and pointed when they recognized me from the posters. Maplewood wasn't home anymore. It was Lily's stage. But then, something happened I never expected. Mrs. Quinn, our neighbor, the one Lily had shut out with her casserole, found me at the gas station. She slipped into my passenger seat like she was committing a crime. Her hand shook as she pressed a USB drive into mine. "I've been recording her," she whispered. On the footage, Lily was at home alone. No headphones. No meter. Talking at full volume. Laughing on phone calls. Even singing in the backyard. And in one clip, I swear, she practiced collapsing in front of the mirror, rehearsing. Proof. Real proof. I cried silently in the gas station parking lot, clutching the drive like it was oxygen. For the first time, I wasn't alone. But Lily must have sensed it, because that night, she escalated again. A new flyer appeared. This one claimed I was offering people money to stay quiet. Blackmail, she called it. She had twisted even my parents' attempt to pay me off, the $5,000 fresh start check they'd given me, into evidence of my guilt. Every gift became a weapon in her hands. Every kindness turned into a crime. But she didn't know yet that my voice was coming back. And when it returned, I planned to use it louder than she ever imagined. Because the girl who made me whisper for years was about to hear me roar. The night before the hearing, I barely slept. I lay in the guest room at Daniel's house, staring at the ceiling, whispering words into the dark. Not whispers, not anymore, rough, broken sounds that scraped my throat raw. My name is Emma. My sister is lying. Every word hurt. But every word was mine. The next morning, the courthouse buzzed like a hive. Reporters crowded outside, cameras waiting. I pulled my hood low, clutching the USB drive from Mrs. Quinn in one hand and my folder of documents in the other. Inside, Lily was already seated. She looked smaller. Pale, thinner, wrapped in a cardigan with her headphones perched like a crown. But her eyes lit up when she saw me, like she was ready for another performance. When the judge called me to testify, my legs shook. I set down my folder, adjusted the microphone, and for the first time in weeks, I spoke in a clear, audible voice. I told them everything. The whisper rules. The contracts. The night of the fire, how years of conditioning nearly killed us all. How I had whispered fire until my throat bled, too afraid to break her rules even as smoke filled my lungs. I didn't whisper any of it. I spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Lily smirked at first, but then Daniel played the videos. Mrs. Quinn's footage of Lily laughing on the phone at full volume. Singing in the backyard. Rehearsing her fake convulsions in the mirror. The smirk cracked. Then Dr. Porter's statement, Lily's perfect hearing, her selective reactions, her behavior matching something called induced illness behavior. Then the fire marshal's evidence, the tipped candle, the disabled alarms, the receipts showing Lily buying the exact brand of candles in bulk, always cash, always in secret. The courtroom air turned heavy. Lily's whisper defense crumbled in real time. When she took the stand, she tried her usual act. Her voice trembled, her hand shook, she claimed she was the victim of a conspiracy. But when Daniel pressed her on the forum posts, the ones where she fantasized about real consequences, her answers tangled. Dates didn't match. Details shifted. And then he showed the diary Dad had found in the attic. Lily's handwriting, age 16. They love me too much to question the performance. That love is my power. I can make them do anything if I threaten to suffer. The courtroom went silent. For once, Lily had no words. The judge ruled the arson charges against me officially dropped. An investigation into Lily's actions began immediately: fraud, false reporting, reckless endangerment. I walked out of that courthouse with my head high and my voice steady. Reporters shouted questions, microphones shoved in my face. I ignored them all. For once, silence was mine to choose. That night, I stood in my new apartment, small, bright, untouched by smoke. I unpacked the only things I had left: the USB drive, my notepad, and a new journal. This one wasn't for evidence. It was for me. I cooked dinner in peace, humming as I stirred the pot. The sound echoed against walls that had never known forced whispers. It was rough, scarred, imperfect. But it was real. And as I lay down to sleep, I thought about something Lily once told me in one of her quieter moments. Silence is power. She was wrong. The real power was in taking my voice back. She made me whisper for years. Now my voice is the one that will haunt her forever.